Welcome to this episode of Paranormal or Reality. Bridges can be beautiful, but when the sun sets, they transform into something much darker. From eerie sounds to mysterious figures lurking around, bridges have been the site for some of the most chilling encounters ever recorded. In this video, we're uncovering spine-tingling stories of creepy encounters deep in the woods, true tales that will send shivers down your spine. If you're a fan of the mysterious and the unexplained, you won't want to miss this. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's begin.
I remember years ago when I was in Boy Scouts, I went on what was supposed to be a regular campout with my troop. We travelled to a remote piece of property belonging to an old family friend, someone whose land I had visited often as a child, mainly to fish. The place had always felt familiar, almost comforting, with its two large ponds and the house nestled eerily between them, like a silent guardian. But that night, everything felt different. We arrived late Friday evening, setting up our tents near the runoff of one of the ponds, just to the left of the house. The air was cool, but something about the way the wind rustled the trees made me uneasy. Maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe it was the way the frogs and crickets seemed to pause as we moved about, as if listening. We cooked dinner, laughed, and eventually decided to play a game of hide-and-seek before turning in for the night. When it was my turn to hide, I ran toward a cluster of trees near the front pond, about 200 yards from our camp. The darkness there felt heavy, like it was pressing against me. The moonlight barely reached through the thick canopy, and the longer I stood there, the quieter everything seemed to become. I crouched behind a large tree, heart pounding from the sprint, and waited. It was then that I noticed something strange. A tree stump, or at least that's what I thought it was. It sat about 10 feet to my right, blending into the shadows, something that had probably been there forever. But something about it gnawed at my mind. It wasn't its shape or its size, but the way my instincts screamed at me to look away. Then, in my peripheral vision, I saw them. 2 tiny red dots. At first, they barely registered. Maybe it was a trick of my eyes adjusting to the dark, or maybe some kind of reflection. But as I stood frozen, I realized they weren't reflections at all. They were eyes, watching, unmoving, silent. The kind of stare that burrows into your soul and makes your skin crawl. I tried to focus on them directly, but every time I did, my vision seemed to blur, as if my mind refused to fully process what I was looking at. However, when I looked just slightly away, keeping them in my peripheral vision, I could see them more clearly. They weren't floating in the air or peering from the brush. They were set at the very top of the tree stump, which suddenly didn't seem like a stump at all. The air felt thick, suffocating, as an unshakable feeling of dread crept up my spine. My body was screaming at me to move, to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. My breath felt too loud in my own ears, and for a moment, it was just me and those unblinking crimson eyes. Then, the impossible happened. The tree stump began to rise. It wasn't growing. It was standing. A shape unfolded in the darkness. Tall, impossibly tall, towering over me like a nightmare pulled straight from the void. My breath caught in my throat as I saw the vague outline of a humanoid figure, its long, spindly limbs stretching unnaturally as it straightened. It was at least 7, maybe 8 feet tall, and its movements were unnervingly slow, deliberate, like it had been waiting for me to notice it before revealing itself. The moment realization hit me, my body finally broke free from its paralysis. I turned and bolted, my feet slamming against the ground as I sprinted back to camp, lungs burning, the darkness behind me feeling heavier with every step. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I felt as though, if I did, I would see it reaching for me, closing the distance, far too quickly. When I finally stumbled into the firelight of our campsite, gasping for breath, my friends barely noticed. They were still playing, still laughing, unaware that anything was wrong. I wanted to tell them. I wanted to scream. But as I stood there, heart pounding, I hesitated. Would they even believe me? Would I believe myself? To this day, I don't know what I saw. Maybe it was just my imagination, the tricks of the dark playing on my mind. But deep down, I know that's not true. I felt something that night, something ancient, something watching. And the worst part?
Welcome to this episode of Paranormal or Reality. Bridges can be beautiful, but when the sun sets, they transform into something much darker. From eerie sounds to mysterious figures lurking around, bridges have been the site for some of the most chilling encounters ever recorded. In this video, we're uncovering spine-tingling stories of creepy encounters deep in the woods, true tales that will send shivers down your spine. If you're a fan of the mysterious and the unexplained, you won't want to miss this. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's begin.
It all started with my very first encounter. I don't remember the exact month, but it was sometime after 2023. A group of friends and I had heard stories about a place known as White Bridge, a forgotten, desolate stretch of road, isolated from the town, tucked away in the kind of darkness that always feels just a little too still. Rumours swirled around it, tales of strange figures lurking in the woods, of people seeing things that shouldn't exist, of something watching. Naturally, we wanted to see for ourselves. We arrived late at night, the sky a heavy, moonless black, as if the stars themselves had abandoned this place. Parking near the bridge, we decided to climb down the steep embankment and sit underneath it for a while, hoping, maybe even daring, something to make itself known. The air was cool, but oddly stagnant, carrying no breeze, no natural night sounds beyond the occasional distant croak of a frog. It felt wrong. We waited. 30 minutes passed, then 40, but nothing happened. The anticipation started to fade, leaving behind an almost mocking silence. Bored and restless, we wandered away from the bridge, following a narrow path leading into the woods. We walked for what felt like forever, a good 25 minutes before the trail led us to a dead end. A dense wall of trees and brambles that seemed too thick, too impenetrable, as if daring us to go further. We didn't. With a collective sigh, we turned back, heading toward the bridge again, this time taking a different route. As we walked, we spotted an old, rusted "Do Not Trespass" sign, half hidden by overgrown weeds. It stood alone in the middle of a clearing, bent, weathered, like it had been there for decades. The metal was scratched up, and parts of the letters were nearly unreadable, but its warning was clear enough. We hesitated. Something about it made me uneasy, though I couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the fact that the area around it was too quiet. No wind, no rustling leaves, no distant chirp of crickets. Just silence. Thick, heavy, unnatural. It clung to us, pressing against our ears, our skin. Still, we shrugged it off, laughing about how we had come all this way for nothing but an old sign and an eerie stillness. It was all just superstition, right? A bunch of urban legends, but then the smell hit us. A rancid, suffocating stench, thick with decay. It was as if something had died nearby, something large, something that had been left to rot under the heat of a merciless sun. But there was no carcass, no source, just the overwhelming, gut-wrenching stink of spoiled meat filling our lungs, burning our throats. I gagged, covering my nose, but it didn't help, and that's when I saw it. To my left, just beyond the tree line, something was standing there. At first, my brain didn't register it. It was just another shadow among the trees, just a trick of the light. But as I squinted, my stomach dropped. It was tall, too tall, at least 8 feet, maybe more. It was nothing but darkness or a void where a body should be. No distinct features, no clothing, no details at all. But I could see it, and worse, I could feel it seeing me. My body locked up, my pulse pounded in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to move, to run, to do anything except stand there, but I couldn't. My limbs felt frozen, as if the very air around me had turned into something thick, something alive, something pressing down on me, holding me in place. Then my friends saw it too. No one spoke, no one had to. We all knew. We were all looking at the same thing, the same wrongness. It was real. Without a word, we started walking faster, trying not to make it obvious that we knew it was there. Then came the flies. Out of nowhere, a swarm of them erupted around us. Dozens. No, hundreds. They buzzed frantically, circling, colliding with our faces, our arms, our hair. They shouldn't have been there. Not in the dead of night. Not all at once, as if they had been called. One of my friends swatted wildly at them, cursing under his breath. Another let out a sharp breath, whispering, "This isn't normal. This isn't normal." And then we heard it. A moan. It came from behind us, out from where we had just been standing. It was long, drawn out, vibrating through the air like it didn't belong in this world. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't the wind. It was something else. That was it. That was the breaking point. We ran. We sprinted back toward the car, stumbling over roots and rocks, our breath coming in ragged gasps. The feeling of being watched never left. In fact, it only grew stronger, as if something was just behind us, inches away, just beyond our sight. The moment we reached the car, we threw ourselves inside, slamming the doors, locking them instantly. We sat there, panting, staring out into the darkness, waiting, expecting to see something emerge from the trees, but nothing came. The night remained still, the woods empty. The flies were gone. The smell had vanished.
Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.